Okay, this, if you'll pardon, this isn't hyperbole, but I intend to, this is the greatest scientific discovery of all time, because I have discovered when time began, it was 192,000 years ago, when the universe, when the dark Big Bang occurred, for the dark universe, the dark matter and the dark energy, I know when that occurred, I know when time began, I know when the light Big Bang occurred, which was 147,000 BC, and I know how long time lasts. It lasts for 1335 millennia, and it ends in 1.1 something million AD. And so I'm going to explain how I deduced all these things. It's not as difficult as astrophysics, although it is astrophysics basically. It's quite simple really, but it does require, I got it from the Bible. So we shall start at the beginning. In Genesis, and so I'm going to prove that there's 1335 millennia of time in total. Now before you say, oh, how can that possibly be true? We know that the universe has been around for 13.7 billion years. Let me tell you this, the speed of light has changed during that time. It used to be 360,000 times faster than it is today, which is taking a day as 1,000 years. There are 360,000 days in 1,000 years. If you take a day to be 1,000 years, you're making a substitution of 1 for 360,000. That is a scripture, and it tells you what the original speed of light was at the Big Bang, actually. And it was 360,000 times faster. So what that means is, although it appears that light has taken 13.7 billion years to get from the furthest star to the Earth today, that is assuming that the speed of light has been the same for the entire 13.7 billion years. It hasn't. It was a hell of a lot faster when the Big Bang occurred. For instance, for argument's sake, if it was 1,000 times faster, then instead of the universe being 13.7 billion years old, it would be 13.7 million years old. It all depends on what the original speed of light was, and we don't know, because the universe, in my understanding, isn't stable with a constant speed of light. And so I just wanted to people who might think this guy's lost it, it's been around for 13.7 billion years. And this brings me to Ricky Gervais, actually, who made, for a comedian, well, comedians can be quite deep, he said, so let me get it right, 13.7 billion years the universe has existed, we come into being for 100 years, have a couple of laughs, and then die, and we're dead forever after that. Is that what the deal is? And, you know, for a guy who's a self-confessed atheist, it's a very good question. The way I'd phrase it is, so God sat around on his backside for 13.7 billion years getting bored stiff, and then about 4000 BC Adam came along, and prior to that, as pre-Adamic man who didn't do anything other than paint a few caves, and he had enough trouble domesticating the sheep, and he didn't really achieve much. And then Adam came along, sort of Mark II human, 4000 BC, actually 4027 BC, and all of a sudden we've got history, and we're writing, and we're making cities, and we're forging metals, and we're making music, and we're conquering each other with horrible schemes, and we're doing politics and all the stuff that mankind does. And then Jesus dies in 33 in his Psalm 14 and is elevated to a god. So the first angel becomes a god, achieves divinity, becomes a true son of his father who is a god. And the whole thing, within 6,000 years, after God was sitting on his backside for 13.7 billion, it doesn't make any sense. So we actually came up with some of this stuff, the Monroe's hypothesis, which I'm about to go into, about 20 years ago, when I was wrestling with this idea of God doing nothing for 13.7 billion years and then everything happening in 6,000 years, which is ridiculous. But anyway, so in honour of Ricky Gervais's astute and deep observation, but not perhaps of his atheism, here is the solution to the cosmological problem of time and space, and how long it all lasts, and when it all begins, and when it all will end. It says in Genesis 1, verse 5, and incidentally, throughout this talk I am assuming that the Bible is a true scientific textbook as well as a religious work. And if you say, well, that's crazy, you're calling Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein crazy, especially Newton, who spent a lot of his life trying to decode the end of the world, actually, from the scriptures. And in his book Observations on the Prophecies of Daniel and the Apocalypse of John, he calculated that the world would end in 2060. We presently calculate, actually, that it ends in 2028. And we're a lot closer to it than he was. He made that calculation over 500 years ago. So it's a blooming good attempt. But he's somebody who believed in God and believed that natural philosophy was the work, the endeavour, what's the word I'm looking for? Was the subject of working out what God had done. He thought science was just the discovery of God's works, and I would agree with him. So anyway, in Genesis 1 verse 5, God began calling the light day. Okay, he called the light day. Prior to that it was let there be light, right? And then once the light appeared, God called the light day. This is Genesis. Then the scripture says, there came to be an evening and there came to be a morning, a first day. And then it says there came to be an evening, there came to be a morning, a second day. But God has called the light day. So if it's the first day, it's the first light. And the second day is a second light. And there are 7 creative days mentioned in Genesis. The 6th creative day ends with Adam's sin. And God made long garments of skin for Adam and Eve, which we presently inhabit. Actually, we don't. We have a short garment of skin. He had a 960-year-long garment of skin, maximum lifespan. He lived 930 of it, and we have 120-year-long lifespan since Moses, and no man lives that anymore. Women get closer to it than we do. They can get to like 116 and stuff. Men generally lucky to get to 100, to 100 really, but some make it to 110. So there have been and will be 7 speeds of light, a different speed of light in each creative day, because there came to be a first day, a first light, because he called the light day. Then there came to be a second day, but he called the light day, so that's a second light. Then there came to be a third day. Am I making myself clear? But he called the light day, so that's a third light. So there have been 7 speeds of light. And now let me tell you about the Monroe's hypothesis. So I was speaking to Beverlyn Monroe's, and I was saying, how can God have sat around for 13.7 billion years and then done everything in 6,000? And she said, well, maybe it's like when I go to work and it's really boring and the day seems to drag and it takes forever. And then another day I go to work and it's all really exciting, and the day just goes before I know it, and it's over. And time seems to go at a different rate depending on how much fun or misery you're having. And so she introduced the concept of apparent time rather than actual time. And so then I thought, well, maybe that applies to Genesis 1, and I thought, well, perhaps if we change the speed of light, it changes the speed at which time goes. It doesn't. All it does is change the speed at which time appears to have gone if you measure it by the redshift, assuming that the speed of light has been constant. So, in fact, I will show you in this new calculator, when I finish in the process of this talk, I will show you that the Big Bang, the light universe Big Bang, occurred 147,000 years ago, which was actually 23.7 billion apparent years ago, when you take into account all the different speeds of light in the 6 creative days. So, well, actually we're in the 7th now, so it's in the 7 creative days to today. That's where people get, this is how you solve this problem of God getting bored and the ridiculous idea that nothing happened for 13.7 billion and it all happened in 6 millennia. So the first point I wish to make is that there's been a different speed in light in each creative day. In fact, that's what a creative day is. It's a different speed of light, and the light speed changes halfway through the day. Because there's in the Hebrew day, even today, it goes evening, then it goes morning, which is totally counterintuitive, but that's how it works. The morning begins halfway through the 24-hour day. In theory, if you're on the equator or if you're at I don't know, the solstice or the equinox. That's the one. Actually, the speed of light changes halfway through each creative day. So, having worked that out, there's some scriptures which sort of confirm that. One of them is James 1:17, which says, "Every good gift and every perfect thing given from above comes down from the Father of the lights," plural. Now you can interpret that he's the Father of the stars, but you're not a Father of stars. And the stars are the angels. You can interpret it like that. He's not called by James the Father of light. He's called the Father of lights, plural. So you can also interpret that as Father of several different types of light, or speeds of light, which would be, I guess, different. I don't know, it's different wavelengths. I'm not quite sure. Then it says, beside whom beside whom not there is alternating beside, or parallax. The Greek word is parallax, parallage, as with the turning of a car's shadow. So what he's saying is there's no alternating, James, with God, but there is alternating with the turning of a car's shadow, and that's of course what happens with light, the shadow from light. So there is an alternating with light, but there is no alternating in the morality and righteousness and laws and love of God, etc. So God is a constant, but light isn't, is what that scripture's saying. James 1:17, in scientific terms, God doesn't change, but the shadow varies. In fact, it alternates. Is one of the meanings of parallax, depending on the position of the observer and the object and all the rest of it. So he's a father of the lights, and he doesn't alternate, but light does. All right. So now the next one is. It describes light as Jehovah's garment, and this is Psalm 104. Bless Jehovah, my soul, you're very great. Thou art clothed with honour and majesty. And then, who covers thyself with light as with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain. So there's the expanding universe for you, written 1,000 years before Jesus, and but he's clothed with it. And then it says in Job chapter 30 verse 18, where's the one I want from this? The great force of my garment is disfigured, it bindeth me as a collar, it takes on a change. Like the colour of my long garment, it engirdles me. The power of my garment takes on a change. The strength of my garment will bind around me. So I think I put that in there because God has more than one garment in his wardrobe, obviously. And Job is saying that the garment changes. And since his garment is light, light changes. And I think the easiest one is Hebrews 1 from Paul, where it says, and according to beginnings, Lord, the earth you founded and the works of your hands are the heavens. They will destroy themselves, but you are remaining through, and all as outer garments will be made old. So the outer, again, the universe is sort of a garment of God, or the light. This is how he clothes himself. And then it says, as if things thrown about you and wrap up, this is his very literal translation, as an outer garment they will be altered. But you are the very one, and your years will not expire, basically. So God continues, but the universe doesn't, and it gets altered. And he changes his garment, changing the speed of light. All right, so I think we've covered that. So now there's 7 different speed of lights. So we know the speed of light today. It's 3 times 10 to the 8 meters a second. C is its constant that we use for it. So we need to find out what was the speed of light at the Big Bang, and what in all six of the creative days prior to today, what was the speed of light, and what will it be actually halfway through today, in the 7th creative day, when it changes again. And there are 2 scriptures, only 2, which are relevant to this. The first one is in 2 Peter 3 verse 8. It says that one day beside the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as day one. Now that is a prophetic form. It's where you state something and then you reverse 2 elements of it, and you state the converse, basically. Well, not the converse, what is it, the reverse, not even that. You perform a transposition and you restated it. The second recital has two numbers transposed, basically. In case you're wondering, I didn't do astrophysics at Cambridge. I did maths. I did actually natural sciences for a year, then I did maths. And this is a prophetic form. It's similar to the first will be last and the last will be first. And when you get that, it's Bible code for, you can swap these. Okay, a day is 1,000 years. A day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. You know, I've only got 5 fingers. Sorry. So it's saying the 2 are interchangeable in Scripture. So whenever you read a day in the Scripture, you can take 1,000 years, and that is incredibly powerful. But it also is a substitution, obviously, of 1 to 360,000, because 1,000 years is 360,000 times longer than a day. And that's beside the Lord. Then the other scripture that's relevant, which mentions how God views things, is for 1,000 years, this is in Psalm 90, verse 4, for 1,000 years in your eyes are as yesterday that passes over, and as a watch in the night. In your eyes. So as from God's standpoint, and this is what Bev was going on about, it's apparent time. You know, it looks like how it looks to God, and how it looks to us. But anyway, he sees this, and he has 2 eyes, so he sees it twice. He sees it twice. So what this is telling you is that there's a substitution of 1,000 years as yesterday twice, as yesterday passing over twice, and another one as a watch in the night twice. And this first one I told you about, one day this is 1,000 years, 1,000 years is one day, that's recited twice. So we've got all 6 substitutions here. We have 3 substitutions mentioned twice. A day for 1,000 years, 1,000 years for a yesterday that passes over, and 1,000 years for a watch in the night. Now there are 4 watches in the Hebrew night. So 1,000, that's 1,000 days for 4 times. It's a bit counterintuitive. You might think it's 1,000 days for a quarter of a night, and therefore it should be 4,000 days for a night. And that is how I initially thought it should be. But that isn't how the Bible code's written, sorry. One watch out of the night, 1 out of 4 is taken as 4 times. So it's saying that a time is taken as a day, a year, or a month. So it's basically saying that, and given that it's a night, it's going to be a day. So not a year and not a month. So it's 1,000 years are 4 days is the watch in the night substitution. And yesterday that passes over, if it passes over, yesterday's above something, and that, so you've got 2 things. So that stands for 2 times. So you've got a substitution of 1,000 years for 2 days, twice, because it's in Jehovah's eyes. 1,000 years for a watch in the night, twice, so that's for 4 days, twice, and 1,000 years for 1 day, twice. So these substitutions are 360 kc, that's a day for 1,000 years, 180 kc, which is 2 days for 1,000 years, and 90 kc, 90,000 c, which is 4 days for 1,000 years. But those are the 3 substitutions, and each of them appears twice. So the speeds of light are 360 kc, 360 kc, 190 kc, 180 kc, 180 kc, 90 kc, 90 kc, and c in the 7 creative days. Now we've got to get the right order. But those are the speeds we plug in to the days. We've just got to put the right one in the right place. And don't forget we had this alternating of the shadows. So that there's going to be, and we also, each day has a different speed of light. So it can't go 360, 360, it has to go 360, 180 or 360, 90. Now, generally, I'm assuming here that the speed of light was quicker at the beginning and got slower as the creative days progressed. So I've gone for 360k, 180k, 90k C. But then we have to repeat it all again. I know the other principle is in the Bible is the first will be last and last will be first. So the 7th creative day will be 360k C again, and that makes perfect sense because and if you do that, the only option in order to get them all to change and every day to be different is 360 kc, 180 kc, 90 kc, then 180 kc, then 90 kc, then 360 kc. Right, that satisfies each day is different. It satisfies you start off descending, and it satisfies first will be last. That's the only solution to that. And when you write that down and you look at it, what it's basically saying in crude terms is speed of light was very, very fast. And if we right now had that speed of light, you know, we could get across the Milky Way in about 4 months. But we don't. And all of a sudden, when we came along, God said, no, we've got to hem them in here to the solar system, reduce the speed of light down to, you know, C, and then even poor old Elon Musk won't get much further than Mars. And the reason for that is, I think everybody knows that we're screwing this planet up. And not just physically, but we're mainly screwing up the people in it more than we're screwing up the planet, actually. Screwing up the planet is just a collateral damage from the damage we're doing to each other and to our morality and to our health and all the rest of it. And we are not, God would not, any self-respecting God would not let us out of the solar system because all we do is screw up the rest of the blooming galaxy the way that we're messing up our own planet, which is indeed why Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, is to give us a plan B in case we screw up completely on this Earth. And it is totally understandable, his position, but he's in a very, very difficult, extremely difficult position because he has so much technological power, and that technological power is courted by very, very dark forces indeed. And he is going to have to be incredibly morally strong to make all the right decisions, and he won't manage it. It's going to be very difficult. But I think his gut is was certainly in the right place. But now he has so much to protect of high value against dangerous people. It's a really difficult game. Anyway, sorry to get political. But hey, he's trying to do something not dissimilar, and I will tell you when the speed of light will go back to being 360 kc, at which point we will be able to go around the galaxy in the same time it presently takes us to sail around the globe, about 4 months, at the speed of the 360 kc speed of light. It's going to be halfway through the 7th creative day, which we're now in. The whole question is, well, how long is that creative day, which we will deduce in a minute. So we've got the 7 speeds of light, which is very nice. All from scriptures, although you do have to understand how the code's written slightly to get the Bible. The Bible is in a code, incidentally. and there's lots of aspects to the code, we don't know it all. We look at the book as if it's, you know, generally it sits in the theology department, but it could be equally in the pure maths department, the philosophy department, the linguistics department, the science department. It could be in the morality department. I think, did I say philosophy? It could be in every scientific discipline and every moral discipline, and in the literary department, the English department. It could be in all of them, because it's got everything in it. I just happen to look at the mathematical side of it more because that's my training. So, alright, now I'm going to introduce you, I have to the concept of a Jubilee. The Jubilee is in Leviticus 25. Here's the concept. Every Jew under law, every son of Israel under law, was given as a birthright, well, actually given as a birthright, but he didn't, some land by his father. He didn't get it till he married a woman, and he built a house on this land from his father. And at that point, the house and the land were his hereditary possession, his inheritance in perpetuity. So, and the way that was manifested is, if you had a bit of a business problem and ended up having to sell your house and lease out your land, you got it back at the Jubilee. And Jubilee was just every 50 years, starting from when the Jews went into the Promised Land, actually from Tishri 1, 1473 it was, the first year, secular year in the Promised Land. And of course, so there was a monthly Jubilee system, sorry, there was an annual Jubilee system under law. That's all I need to say. So the basic concept is, at the Jubilee, you get returned to you your inheritance, your birthright, let's call it that, your birthright. Okay, so to confirm that one can apply the 50 time unit count of the Jubilee to the totality of time and to the totality of the universe, we have the words of Solomon in Ecclesiastes 3:1, who says, for the whole thing there is an appointed time, and a time for every desire under the heavens, a time for birth and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot what was planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build, blah blah blah, time to weep, time to laugh, time to wail, time to skip. And if you count the whole thing up, it counts as 50 times, which is quite a simple count. You know, a time for birth is one, a time to die is another, but it's not quite as simple as that, because a time for a noun is 2 times. Time for a noun. A time to dance is 1 time. A time of war is 1 time, because it's a noun chain with the war acting as a adjective, a noun acting as an adjective. So it's a grammatical code as regards the count. You have to pay attention to whether it's a noun, a verb, or a noun acting as a genitive noun, basically. So when you do that, it counts as 50 times. So in other words, the whole deal takes 50 times. It's the temporal length of the light universe is 50 times, and the temporal length of the dark universe until the end of its time is 50 times. The whole deal, 1335 millennia, is obviously a multiple of 50 times, because it's it's a multiple of 1,000 times. So that kind of confirms the Jubilee can be applied to the largest possible period of time, which is the total amount of time there is, which is 1335 millennia. But it is cute. I'm not even sure I got it right, actually. Alright, So now that we understand the concept of a jubilee, which is after 50 times you get your inheritance, we're going to go and look at Daniel chapter 12. Because I started off the talk by saying that taking a day as 1,000 years you can do anywhere in the Bible, because the scripture says to Jehovah, or to the Lord, actually, which is Jesus or Jehovah, who are two different people, one the son of the other. A day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. So they're interchangeable. Now, the largest number of days in the Bible mentioned is 1,335 days. And that's in Daniel chapter 12. And what it actually says is, oh, the happinesses or blessednesses, which is a polite plural, it literally means it's, oh, how happy. The one keeping in expectation, who arrives at the 1335 days, who touches, is it the end of the 35? Have I quoted it? Who reaches, yeah. Oh, the happinesses of the one keeping in expectation who reaches the 1335 days. Okay? Now, if you're going to keep in expectation, you need time. If there's no time, you're not in expectation. Expectation is waiting for an event which is happening at a time in the future. So keeping in expectation, being in expectation means there's time. So God began to be in expectation when he created time. Prior to him creating time, there is no expectation. You know, if there isn't any time, if I want to go to Tesco's, I'm just there. If I want to go to Barbados, I'm there. There is no time. I don't have to wait. So when you start waiting, there's time. So 1335 millennia is the total amount of waiting one has to do, and the happiness at the end of it is that, you see, we are all sons and daughters of God, scripturally, the angels and the humans. And God's job is to procreate, and like begets like. So it's a bit of a deep spiritual concept, but some churches already have it. Our destiny, our birthright, indeed, is to be what we are made in the image of God, says the scripture in Genesis 1:28. Actually, the pre-Adamic men were in the image of the angels, because that was, let us make men in our image. But then God made the man's image. So Adamic man, Mark II man, clever clogs who can write and make wars and worship and forge metals, him, who we are, he's made in the image of God, and he will become what he's an image of, and it's God's job to make sure he does. I mean, if you are a professor of mathematics, not all of them, but many of them will train their children so that they're good at maths, and one day they can be also a professor of mathematics. If you are a car mechanic or a property dealer, you will train your children in what you know. This is what fathers do. And maybe they will become property dealers and car mechanics. They don't have to be. My father was a doctor. He was a professor of surgery, and that's why I did natural sciences at Cambridge to start off with, because he wanted to keep the door to medicine open, and I didn't enjoy it much at the time. I liked natural science. I didn't like biology much, but I can't tell you how glad I am that I did sell biology, because it enabled me to understand what was going on with the vaccines, and to understand the language of the scientific papers, and to do the research. And I thank Cambridge for giving me that education, and I thank my father for forcing me to do something I wouldn't otherwise have done. But eventually I changed to maths, because my whole rooms at Cambridge were covered in equations, and it was quite obvious to, not to me, but to a friend of mine, that I was a mathematician. And they let me change to do maths, and it was a beautiful thing. I'm so glad they did it. And here's the result of a fantastic education. The whole chronology of time. So if you are a child of God, it is God's job, just as a mechanic trains his child, just as a doctor tries to train his child, and just as a property dealer, and just as a professor of mathematics, it's his job to train you to be a divinity as he is. And to be divine You have to have perfect moral judgment, and you have to execute your perfect moral judgment perfectly. In other words, you don't make any moral mistakes. You become the Jim Clark or the Lewis Hamilton of the moral vehicle of your life. You become perfect, a perfect driver of your vehicle morally, and easier said than done. There's only one Son of God who so far achieved it, as far as I'm aware, which is Jesus, who achieved it when he carried God's divinity on his shoulders during his ministry to the point of death, proving that it doesn't matter how much shit you gave him, he would stick to his morality. Once you learn that sin is a cul-de-sac, you don't even go down the road. And he learnt that lesson, and he demonstrated it, not just theoretically, which is one step, but he demonstrated it practically in a difficult circumstance. So that was good enough for God. So we all will become gods. And when we do become gods, we will be outside time, because the purpose of, certainly of causal time, is to fix sin. You know, when you sin on Tuesday and there's causal time, you cannot undo it on Wednesday. So you're stuck with it, and that's how God teaches you not to sin, because you don't want to be stuck with sin. It's not a good look, and makes you feel awful. So it takes 1335 millennia from God inventing time to time ending, and time ends when all of us are gods. Now that is not a jubilee. Because it doesn't begin with the birth of a person, it begins with the birth of time. So, we want to know, when was the... let me get this right. Well, we want to know how long a created day is, basically. So, now we have to go to the previous verse of Daniel, 12, verse 11, which says, "And from the time that the constant feature has been removed, and there's been a placing of the abomination that's causing desolation, there will be 1290 days," which we're going to take as 1290 millennia. And incidentally, the question that answers is, there's an angel speaking to Daniel, and Daniel says to this angel, how long until the end of all these mad, incredible things, wonderful, miraculous, extraordinary things the word could mean. And the angel raises his hand, and he says various things, and then he says, as soon as there's a finishing of the dashing of the power of the holy people to pieces, these things will come to a finish. So when there's no more dashing of the power of the holy people, in other words, when there's no more sin, these things end. And then he says, well, what will be the final part of the things? So, and the answer to that is his 1290 days verse. So the 1290 days ends coincident with the 1335. It ends at the end of time, when we all become gods. And it begins with the removal of a constant feature, which is a form of worship. It's the fall of a church, basically. And there's been a placing of the abomination that causes desolation. Now, there are two candidates for the big picture loss of the constant feature and the abomination causing desolation. One is the original sin of Adam, because that ended the constant feature of true worship in Eden, and the abomination that causes desolation was death, Adamic death. That because true worship in Eden was defined simply as eating from the tree, and when you not eating from the tree, sorry, when you do eat from the tree, that's false worship, and that ended Eden. And like I said, the Adamic death, the first death for humans, is the abomination, horrible thing that causes desolation, and so that's one candidate. Now the other candidate is the angelic equivalent. So here, there's one more concept I haven't got through to you yet, which I must, which is that Genesis 1 and all the scriptures, actually, the whole Bible, is quadratic, quartic, cubic, even quintic, actually. Or, I mean, it has in meaning. It has the literal meaning, if it's a literal account, and it has between 1 and 4 word symbolic meanings, which are symbolisms to do with the words, not the events. And if it's a symbolic account, it has an event symbolic meaning, a regular symbolic meaning that we all understand, and then it also has 4 word symbolic meanings, between 1 and 4. It can actually have naught, very rarely. So it so happens in Genesis that there are 3 symbolic meanings to Genesis. One is the 6 created days for humans, from that begins, and let there be light was the Big Bang, you know, when space-time came to be, the light universe came to be. Another is an isomorphic scenario for the angels who sinned in Ark Eden, and who suffer angelic first death, which is Tartarus, and their creative days began, and their Big Bang was halfway through the first angelic creative day. And then there's an even further one where you take 1,000 years for a day, and it's 6,000 years from actually Melchizedek being given, where is it from? From Melchizedek being making the faith ransom covenant with God, actually, which he did when he was 99 years old. And Melchizedek was Jared. Jared became Melchizedek. But I don't need to go into that. I'm just telling you that that's the third meaning. I don't need that in order to do this time stuff. What I do need is that there's an angelic equivalent to the human situation, because in Genesis it said, in the beginning God made the heavens and the earth, and the Bible is maximally distributive. So that means there's one whole story of the heavens and another whole story. In the beginning God made the heavens is one story, in the beginning God made the earth is another. So Genesis is the story of both the creation of the heavens and the earth. Now the earth has a heavens, the atmosphere and the heavens, but also the heavens themselves are a place that need to be created. And they're all the dark matter. So basically there's a creation of the dark universe, and there's a creation of the light universe. And there's angelic sin, which was... God responded to that by the creation of the dark matter universe, and there's human sin. Sorry, that's completely wrong. God created the dark matter universe as a house for the angels. He created the light matter universe as a response to angelic sin and as a house for the humans, who were the fix for angelic sin, actually. Because they learn from us as we learn from them. I guess we fix each other. So, because we're brothers. So, you've got these 2 choices. Either you're going to start the 1290 millennia at Adam's sin, or you're going to start them at original human sin, that is, or you start them at original angelic sin in Ark Eden. So either you start them at Adamic sin when Adam screwed up in Eden, or you start them at angelic sin in Ark Eden. And it's actually, it can't be Adam. You can work it all out. The numbers don't work. I've done it on U234, Understanding 234. It's the angelic one. So what that means, and the angelic sin, you see what happened, let me tell you about time. God invented time, as we will see, 192,000 BC, and when he invented it, it was a different form of time from angelic time, which is a different form of time from human time, from what we see in the light universe. So there's dark universe time, which is angelic time, there's light universe time, which is our time, and there's divine time. And the difference between them is the amount of causality. When God invented it, being God, he can get out of anything. So there was 100% undo in his time. So, you know, if you murdered somebody on Friday, you could just undo it and then not murder him anymore and go back and say, that was a mistake, let's undo that. So the first thing God did is created totally 100% undoable time, which is how you would do it, because you don't want to limit yourself. I mean, he's outside time anyway, but he created it. And I don't know whether he then has to be subject to it. I don't think he does. But anyway, he created it, and it was totally undoable. That was the first form of time, and that applied for the first half of the first angelic creative day. Then there was, because the day has to begin with a form of time, right? You can't, there is no time, there is no day. So the first angelic creative day, which preceded the human creative days, because they were created first, began with the creation of time. Totally bidirectional. You know, you could undo anything. You had a full 100% undo. It was 100% non-causal time. Then along came the angels, and he had a new type of time in the morning. The morning, halfway through the first angelic creative day, which was somewhat undoable. You know, perhaps if you angel and you did something bad on the Monday, you could erase it up to the Tuesday, but not on the Wednesday. It's a bit like when you do a tweet and you've got 30 minutes. You can undo what you've said if you have second thoughts. But if you leave it more than 30 minutes too late, it's there. You're finished. It's there. So I think the angels had, you know, somewhat undoable time. You know, limited causality time. Then we came along, and by the time we came along, it was fully causal. You couldn't undo anything. It's like blockchain time, you know. Because and that's why we're better at getting rid of sin. You know, when a human sins, he is screwed. That sin is there. You go to prison. You've done your crime, well, unless you're in America, in which case you don't go to prison. You get a sort of pat on the back and asked to go out and commit more horrific crimes. But and even in this country now. But anyway, the purpose of causal time is to shine a light, not just because everything God does physically is telling you about morality. Okay, there's physical light, but what does that do? That illuminates everything everybody's doing. What does that mean? It means that if you do something wrong, everyone can see it, because it's stuck in time, and you cannot. It's a blockchain thing. You can't undo it. So we are blockchain time. We are fully causal time. The angels are partially causal time, and God is non-causal time. But going back to the 1290 days, and now we can do the calculation. It's 1290 millennia, and it runs from the Big Bang. Because what the angels did is they sinned in the sixth creative day, just as their sixth creative day, just as Adam sinned in his sixth creative day at the end of it. They sinned at the end of their sixth creative day. And God had to show them, to stop them sinning. And the way he had to stop them sinning is he said, well, all right, I tried you with this, you know, partially limited causal time, and it didn't work. So now we're going to go for fully causal time, and you'll have to face up to your sin, and you cannot pretend it didn't happen or undo it. You know, when you've committed a sin, it's stuck with you, and you've got to learn that you're a sinner, and you've got to stop it. You know, it's a bit like having an autocorrect. When you've got an autocorrect, it's a disaster. I mean, I had autocorrect on in Word, and now whenever I type a capital at the start of a word, the second one's always capitalised too, which didn't matter when you had autocorrect in Word. But if you don't have autocorrect on anymore, you're useless. It ruins my ability to type, having autocorrect. And it's the same with the angels. It ruined their ability to resist sin, having the ability to just delete it, you know, like it never happened. The way to kill sin is you have to make it real, and that's what time does, and that's what Let There Be Light was all about. It also illuminates the sin, but it illuminates it through time, because time is the wake of light. The light and the speed of light creates time in our universe, and did also in the angelic dark universe, and did well, because there's a different form of light. The other thing which is a bit difficult to grasp is that darkness is not the absence of light. Darkness is a different type of non-light, but of semi-causal time, you know, caused by, I don't know what the bloody hell semi-causal light is, but something like that. Alright, so going back to the 1290, sorry I'm going around my houses. The 1290 millennia run from the Big Bang, when the constant feature of true angelic worship in angelic Arch-Eden ended, and when the abomination that caused the desolation of first angelic death was placed, the abomination being the original angelic sin which caused angelic first death, and it ends at the end of all time, which is the end of the universe. And of course the Let There Be Light is halfway through the first creative day of the humans. So there are, and now what we do is we say that the entire period from the we don't have to say that. Yes, we don't have to say that. What we say is that in the first creative day, of the light universe, halfway through it, the Big Bang occurred. And there will be 50 creative days, because that's how long the whole deal is according to Solomon, and that's when you get returned to your birthright. What's annoying me about that is there weren't any humans at the beginning of the universe. There was the constant feature. Why would there be a jubilee? I guess you get returned to your birthright at the Jubilee. You don't actually have to be born at the beginning of the Jubilee to benefit from that. Just when the Jubilee occurs, you get returned to your birthright. So if there's creative days, at the 50th creative day, you get fully created, that you get returned to the birthright that you have as a creation of God, which is to be a God. So in other words, it takes 50 days, 50 creative days from the first creative day of the light universe for humans to become gods, for example. So, and the same is true of the angels, but their Big Bang was was before ours. I mean, so let me do this step by step. The 50 days, see, we're trying to get the length of the creative day, and we know that the Big Bang began halfway through the first, and we know that there's 50 of them, and we know that they must end at the end of the 1290 millennia. So what that means is that 49 and a half creative days make 1290 millennia, because that takes, the 1290 days runs from the Big Bang, from the loss of the constant feature, from the abomination causing desolation, which is the original sin of the angels actually. Well, I mean, it runs from the original sin of the angels, who were around at the time when we weren't. Yeah, you have to do it in terms of 50 light creative days, but 49 and a half of them are the 1290 of Daniel 12:11, 1290 millennia. So what? Sorry, I'm not explaining this very well. It all ends when we become gods, when nobody sins anymore, and and the whole process. I don't like it because it's from angelic sin. I don't like it. No, I have to do it like there's 50. I'm trying to apply the Jubilee. The Jubilee is the 50th unit of time, actually, to be fair. And that's when you get returned to your birthright. I'm taking it as the 50th day of your life, but it isn't. It's the 50th unit of time. And the first unit of time is the first created day in the light universe. So as regards the light universe, there are 50 creative days until it ends, because you must be restored to your birthright at the 50th unit of time. That's the Jubilee, and the unit of time in the light universe is the creative day, and the 50th. So there are 50 in total, and Daniel 12:11 says that 49.5 of them from when Let There Be Light was said until the end, ignoring the first half day when there wasn't any light. Those 1290 make 1290 millennia. So you divide 1290 by 49.5 and you get 26,060.60606060 years. So that is the length of a light universe creative day. That's the length of the creative days as most people understand it in Genesis chapter 1. Right? They weren't one physical day. They were an epoch, and the epoch is 26. Now the thing about days is they're all the same length of the week. 7 days of the week, Monday's the same length as Tuesday's the same length as Wednesday. I mean, that isn't quite true oh, it is, they're 24 hours. No, it is absolutely true. The amount of sun and darkness is different, but they're 24 hours. They are 24 hours each. So, so they're all the same length, but they have different speeds of light. And there's 50 of them that make 49.5 of them. Sorry, that make up the 1290. So you've got a 26,060 year creative day, and once you've got that, we know that Adam sinned 3993 Nisan 14 BC. That's even Archbishop Usher got Adam born in 4004 BC. He did that in 15 something 90 something. He was the head of the Protestant Church in Ireland. Newton had it at about 4000 BC. If you do the calculation properly, which is done in Understanding 16, U16 or U31 on True Bible Code, it's actually 4027 Tishri 2 he was born, and he sinned 3993 Nisan 14, same day Jesus paid for his sin, at the same age Jesus was when he paid for his sin. Adam was 33.5 years old when he sinned. Jesus was 33.5 years old when he paid for Adam's sin and ransomed him. So 3993 is the end of the 6th creative day, so you can count back 5.5 creative days before then, and you get to the Big Bang, which happened in 147327 Chislev 14 BC, which was 23,454,562,478. It was 23,454,562,478 BC. in terms of apparent years, if you factor in all the different speeds of light. So that's how far mankind should be able to find a star that's that old. That will be the oldest one, or close to it anyway. There's a guy, Rajendra Gupta, in the University of Ottawa, who doesn't think it's 13.7 billion years. He thinks the universe is 26.7 billion years old, and he's just done a paper that's I think it's a preprint, I think it might have been published on that. So mankind has it somewhere between 13.7 and 26.7. I've got it as 23.7 billion years, 23.454 billion years old for the Big Bang. That's the light universe Big Bang, and the beginning of the first creative day, the morning of the first creative day was, the evening of the first creative day, when there wasn't any Big Bang, but the creative day began for us, was 160,357 BC Ab 25. Now, prior to us, we've got the angelic situation, and we know that between 1290 millennia and 1335 millennia, there are 45,000 years. And that's 6 angelic creative days. So each angelic creative day is 7,500 years. So our creative days are 26,060.6060, and the angelic ones are 7,500 because there's 6 of them in 45 millennia. So from that you can deduce that the Jubilee of Angelic Time, the 50th Angelic Creative Day, is 182,674, which is 14 AD, so 182,000 AD basically. And whereas the end of all time, this is the end of time, when all time ends, and so that's when all the angels are God. All the angels become gods, or at least the morning stars do. They're called morning stars because they were created in the morning of the 6th angelic creative day, which was the evening of the first human or light universe creative day. So, and the end of all time is 1,142,676, Chislev 14 AD. You know, it's 1.14 million AD. That's how long it takes God to make all of his human children and all of his angelic children into gods. Now, it doesn't take people alive today that long necessarily. I actually think that people alive today make it within 50,000 years to divinity. But we're going to have children way into the future. And then, now that we know how long the 7th creative day is, being 26,060 years plus change, we can calculate when halfway through it is, and it's 9,000, you know, given that it began 3993 BC, we have 13,030 years plus 3.303030, and we get to 9,038 ab 3 AD. So we're now 2023, 4. So in 7,014 years, the speed of light will change. Elon Musk will be pleased to know, to be 360,000 times faster than what it is today. And that means that in 7,014 years' time, we will be able to go and colonize the Milky Way, just as we have colonized the planet. That's when we start doing Star Trek, basically. I mean, I know Elon's trying to do it now, but he can't get much out of further than the solar system because of the speed of light. And God's deliberately designed it like that to stop us screwing up the galaxy. But in 7,000 years' time, the good news is our morality will have advanced, despite all the attempts of the demons to ruin it, to the point where he trusts us to colonize the entire Milky Way galaxy. What other lovely dates do we have here? Oh yeah, so I mean, all I've done is counted back 45,000 years from 147,327, and you get to 192,327, which is left 14. That's when divine time begins. That's when God made a watch. That's when he made 100% non-causal, fully undoable time. Then in the first creative day, in the first morning, he made, there was the dark Big Bang, and he made darkness, whatever the hell that is. Something not light, but something else that we don't really understand. And one thing that does interest me is whether it is true that dark energy equals dark mass times the speed of darkness squared. I don't know whether that makes any sense. I mean, distance would be called non-causal time. And the darkness is the dark bang, Big Bang equivalent of light, dark photons or something. You know, that's just speculation. No, but the rest of it isn't. It's calculation, and I think that's it. So I've done a big chart of it, and it's on Understanding 234. And Dave's going to do a nice graphic of it, which will be much better than my table. So to sum it all up. 1290, all of time, takes 35 million millennia, which is 35,000 years. That's all. It's not so long, really, in sort of astronomical terms. That's all the time there is, because that's the period of God keeping in expectation. And when there is no time, you're not in expectation of anything because it's instant. And when there is time, you are in expectation of everything because it happens it's fixed in time. So that's how much time there is. And then there's 45,000 years from the beginning of time to the Big Bang. And then there's 1290 millennia from the Big Bang to the end of time. And from that you can, and then remembering that there's 50 days make a jubilee, and these creative days, there'll be 50 of them before we all get returned to our birthright. I mean, you don't have to be born on the first year of the jubilee. You just have to be born during the jubilee period, and you will then get your birthright at the end of the jubilee. So I mean, what that probably means, or must mean, is that humans won't be born like one day before the end of time, because we won't have time to become a god. I mean, God has to do two things. It's not like, I mean, with a human, we raise our children, as I said, to be what our fathers are, and give them the option to be something else if they want. And with God, he raises his children to be what he is, which is a God, which is somebody with perfect moral judgment and perfect moral execution on that judgment. And the whole process takes God. He invests, 1335 millennia, or 1.335 million years. And in that, you have the dark Big Bang, you have the light Big Bang, and you have when we can conquer the entire galaxy and all the rest of it. It's all in that 1335 millennia. And that's how much time it takes God to make us into gods from the start of his inventing time, which was in order to show up sin, in order to teach us not to do it, because a God is somebody who doesn't sin. Alright, I think that's enough of that, and thank you very much for listening. I hope this is going to be some use to astrophysics.